Hello everyone, welcome to this session on Introduction to Selenium. Today in this session, I will basically guide you on how to create your first Selenium test case using TestNG framework. Alright, so this is a beginner session guys, so I'll take you from step 1, that is what is Selenium, till the last, wherein we will be creating a full-fledged Selenium test case today. Right? So to most of you who are new to this channel guys, I request you all to subscribe to this channel to basically see what all we come up with, and we also come up with live videos every week, that is Tuesday and Thursday, right? So you can subscribe to our channel to get to know more about it. So now let's get started guys. Today, like I said, we are going to talk about Selenium. So let's go ahead and start with the session with the first topic, which is basically Introduction to Selenium. Alright, so what is Selenium exactly guys? So Selenium is nothing but it's basically a framework for testing web applications, right? It basically gives you a tool which you can basically code in, and whatever you code in the Selenium tool, that code is basically used to play back actions which you would do as a human on a computer machine. For example, let's say you have, let's talk about Intellipaat. Let's talk about the Intellipaat.com website. Let's say I want to go on the Intellipaat.com website and I want to click on the search bar and I want to type some text over there and then click on search button and then see whatever page is coming up, whether that's the search page and whether the intended results are visible there or not. Now this is what I want to test. Right now, there are two ways I can go about it. Either I can do it automatically, that is, I can either do it through creating an automated test, or obviously I can do it manually. So I can put some manual testers in my team and they can check this functionality every time it's working. Right now, Selenium basically helps you to create automated test cases. Now what does that mean? So whatever actions that I just told you, that is, I have to go to Intellipaat.com, I have to click on the search bar, then I have to type in some text, then I have to click on search. All of these can be performed in Selenium through code, and you can actually see a browser being opened, the Intellipaat.com website being visited, the text being typed in, and everything happens like I'm telling you, but this happens through code. And whatever you want to test, let's say I want to test that whenever I reach on that search page, I want to check whether the title is search results, and let's say a minimum of I have 6 courses which are related to the term which I entered. Those 6 courses should be visible over there. So I can put in code this testing, and then it should also give me the test result in the form of an HTML file, where I can actually see on a dashboard kind of a view that is in my browser, that is what test failed. Did I see the heading? Did I have the 6 courses there? If not, how many were there? So all of this can be configured in Selenium, and this is very helpful for people who are developers, wherein they're writing a code and the test case has been developed by the test team, as in let's say you're a developer and you have been given a code, and let's say your code basically expects you to give 2 parameters which are basically 2 strings, and what you expect out is just 1 string which should be a combination of both the strings, right? So if this is the expected code behavior that is there, you can actually ask your testing team to create a test case around this, and then you can give this your developer this work, and whenever he's done with this work, what he'll do is he'll just upload this code onto, let's say, GitHub, and once it's uploaded to GitHub, if there is a DevOps methodology being followed, it will basically invoke a pipeline, wherein in that pipeline you will have that test case also there. Right, and a code will automatically be tested against a test case to see whether 2 strings are given and whether a combination of it comes out or not. And if it does, the test passes and the feedback is given to the developer, and the developer knows, okay, so my test work or my code worked just fine. And if not, he can immediately get the feedback that the code is not working. So basically what I'm trying to tell you over here is that the developer himself, he does not have to rely on the tester for him to finish his other work, then to start his code and then give him the review. He can actually get this test in seconds the moment he submit this on GitHub. And this is the main advantage of automated testing, that is you get quick feedbacks. And obviously if this was just one test case that I explained to you, right? Imagine having an application and you can have hundreds or thousands of test cases over there, right? And if you have only manual testers in your team, not only the work is going to be slow, but even for your team it will be a very repetitive task. For every release they will have to do all those hundreds or thousands of test cases, and then it'll be very repetitive and boring for your team. So automated testing also solves that. So from the business perspective, you need less resources to do the same kind of testing. And from the employee's perspective, if there is a manual testing in your team, in your development your development team or your tech team, they will be given only work which you can actually not automate, which is also going to be interesting for them. So that is the whole idea behind automated testing, right? And there are a lot of tools in automated testing, Selenium being the primary tool which is preferred. All right, now let's go ahead and talk a little more about Selenium as to when it came into the place. So basically Selenium was created by a person who was Jason Huggins in the year 2004, right? And he had the same problem, that he was working on a web application and he had to test it pretty frequently, right? So since he was doing manual testing, it was taking a lot of time. So what he did was he thought of a hack wherein he created a JavaScript program which could basically control the browser actions and do whatever testing or whatever actions are required on his website to get a particular result, which he could then validate using his JavaScript program. So he named this particular program which could do actions on a browser as JavaScript Test Runner. This was the first name which was given to Selenium, and he then donated this particular program to the open source community once his work was done, when he felt that many of his fellow developers also faced a similar problem which he faced, which is manual testing, right? So when this was donated onto the open source community, this later named to be as Selenium Core. Okay, but the story did not end here, right? Selenium has 5 different components, and these 5 components have to work with each other to basically get the work done, right? So you have something called as Selenium RC, you have something called as Selenium IDE, Selenium Grid, and then you have Selenium WebDriver, right? So all of these together, they basically solved the problem of automated testing, and Selenium Core itself did not suffice in solving everything for us, right? So when the open source project it progressed, we could see these all components coming out, and let's understand these components one by one. So what is Selenium RC? So Selenium Core basically had a problem that you had to install the website, whatever website you have to test, that had to exist on the same system in order for Selenium Core to test it, right? So this was a problem because the technology at that time, it did not allow your computer to automatically go on a website and do actions. So hence this was a limitation wherein you had to put the website that you had to test, you had to have this web server on your own system, and only then the Selenium Core could test it, right? And obviously this was done to keep to keep the safety standards in place. So what Selenium RC did for us was it created a proxy server wherein Selenium Core felt as if the website that you are basically testing, it exists on the local host, right? So this is what Selenium RC was. So this was basically a hack, and basically this helped us to overcome the problem of not being able to test websites which are there on a particular domain or are there on some other system which we are accessing through the internet. So this was solved, right? And this was called Selenium 1 in the earlier stages. Then we came up with something called as Selenium IDE. Now what was Selenium IDE? Basically this Selenium IDE helped you to, if you don't want to code, what you can do is you can simply do some actions on a browser, and those actions are basically recorded, and those are automatically converted into code, and then you could play back those same actions to do a particular test, right? So this was what Selenium IDE was, and this was made by a gentleman whose name was Shinya Kasatani from Japan, and he made this to basically increase or decrease the speed of increase the speed of creating test cases when it comes down to Selenium, right? So it drastically increased the speed. We were able to create test cases pretty fast with the help of Selenium IDE. Then came Selenium Grid, which basically helped us to do parallel testing. So if you're doing testing on one system, you might get to know as you move along that the test that you do is you can only do one test at a time on a system, right? But imagine if we have thousands of components to be tested on an application and we are limited on time, we would want all those 1,000 tests to be executed concurrently, right? So for those kind of scenarios, we had Selenium Grid. So Selenium Grid was a component which basically helped us to achieve parallel testing in real time. And finally, we had a component which was WebDriver, which basically helped us to create a testing framework, which was the first cross-platform testing framework. And with this, we could actually control the control the browser from the OS level, right? And it was developed in 2006, and this basically helped us to test web applications, and this was better, and it was actually a combination of IDE and RC, and WebDriver pretty much solved every problem for which the different components were invented. For example, RC and IDE were invented. RC was invented because we needed a proxy server, and IDE was invented because we needed a playback feature. So all of that comes down in WebDriver, and that is how it is helpful. Okay. So if I were to summarize what I just explained you, now we just have three components. We have Selenium Grid for having parallel tests to execute. We have something called a Selenium IDE for playback feature. Then we have Selenium RC, which basically got merged in a better software which we came up with, which is Selenium WebDriver, right? And that used to be called as Selenium 2 earlier, and then further improvements were made to it, and we now call it as Selenium 3, and that is what we need or we use these days, right? So because Selenium RC is merged in Selenium 3, we no longer need to have that proxy server in place, or we no longer need to have a server which is installed on our system on which we download the website and run. Any domain that we specify, it can be tested using Selenium with Selenium 3. Right? If you need the playback feature, you would have to download Selenium IDE. If you need to run parallel tests, you will have to download Selenium Grid. Today in this session, I'm going to focus more on WebDriver because it's about creating test cases, and most of the time, most of the automated testers that exist in the industry, they actually work on the WebDriver than on Grid or IDE, right? And if we talk about the top bottom approach wherein we should start from scratch, I think the best possible way to learn Selenium is by learning Selenium WebDriver first, right? So this is what we are going to do. Now, with Selenium, you need a very important component which is basically called Maven. Now, what is Maven? Maven basically is a dependency management tool which basically helps you to download dependencies. Whatever dependencies your software requires, Maven can download it for you automatically, right? For example, in my Selenium test case, let's say if I need certain libraries to be downloaded, what I can do is I can either search the internet, download all of them together, include them in my project, and then go ahead and start creating my test case. So obviously this will take some time, right? But to further improve it, we came up with Maven, where we had a central repository where all the dependencies existed, and all we had to do was we had to specify which dependencies to download in our code, and Maven would download that and keep it in our code and make our code ready, right? This was a very important task and Maven made it possible. So now instead of searching the internet for all your dependencies or all the libraries that you need, you just need to specify the dependencies that you need inside a pom.xml file, which is basically the file that Maven reads and then downloads those dependencies automatically for you through its central repository system, right? So this is what Maven is. Now, again, if you were to talk about features, so Maven is basically used to download dependencies, and the dependencies are basically included inside a POM file, and all you need to do is put the dependencies inside the POM file, save the project, and all the dependencies will be downloaded for you, right? So this is what Maven does. Now, let me show you how you can, set up Selenium with Maven. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, let me just switch back to my browser. All right, so the first thing that you would need to create a Selenium test case, guys, is Eclipse. Now, Eclipse is an IDE which helps you to write code and also execute that code on that particular framework. So just type in Eclipse download, right? And whatever link you see first, just go over there, click on that. And once you go there, you will find a place which looks like this, right? So usually what happens is this particular website automatically detects which operating system you're working on, and it automatically suggests you the download that you have to do, right? Just click here and then you would be able to download the setup file for Eclipse. Now, when you download the setup file for Eclipse, there will be a lot of versions for you to choose with, right? For example, when you first double click on the setup file, it'll ask you which Eclipse to basically install. So there are a lot of Eclipse versions, right? There are a lot of features that can be incorporated with Eclipse. So you have to download or you have to install the Java for Eclipse for developers version, right? The logo for that will look something similar to what you have in the screen corner over here, right? Just select that particular option, Eclipse for developers, and just click on the routine, how you set up all your programs. Just click next, 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 and then finish it off, and your Eclipse will then be ready, right? So now once your Eclipse has been downloaded, you will actually see a screen which will basically look something like this, right? So forget about the code. What you'll see is a window which looks like this, and the first thing that you have to do is click on File, click on New, click on Java Project, and then specify the project name. Let's say the project name that we want to specify is Test, and then you click on Finish. So this will create your first Java your project in Eclipse, right? So this is your Java program. Just double click it, go to source, and you will not find anything. What you'll have to do is right click here, right, and then click on New, click on Class, and then just specify the name of the class, and then you will be done. So let's say we specify Test, right? Click Finish. So you have a test.java now in which you can actually work, right? So this is how you create your first project file in Eclipse. Now we want to use Maven in our project, right? So how do we do that? So you might be wondering that I told you we created a Java project. So how do we create a Selenium project? So don't worry, everything will be clear as we move along. So what we do is we click on File, we click on New, and what I get over here is something called so let's click on Project. Okay, now once you click on File, New, and go to Project, you will find a folder called Maven over here, right? And what you have to do is click on Maven project. Now how do you get this Maven over here? To get this, what you have to do is, again, back to the main screen, you'll have to go to Help, click on Help, and click on Install New Software. Right here you'll have to type in the website from where you want to download. So you just specify this website. So the website is beust.com/Eclipse. You specified this. What this will do is it will download TestNG for you, right? This is important. Why is this important? I'll tell you, right? So this will install the TestNG framework. Go there, install that, and then you're done. Then the next thing that you need to do is, once you have installed TestNG, just go back on your screen and you should be able to find Maven over here, right? So first, if I go to tell you the steps, you have to first okay, we missed out on a very important step, guys. You will need to have JDK installed on your system before you install Eclipse, right? So for example, when you install Eclipse, you will be given an error that JDK is not installed on your system, right? So for that, what you have to do is just type in JDK download, right? And just go to the first link that you get. You'll have to sign up over here before you can download. Just click on download, and once you are on the screen, just download whatever operating system you're on. Download the binary version for it. All right. So once you click on the JDK, it will start getting downloaded, and also obviously you'll have to accept the license, right? And once it starts getting downloaded, guys, when it's completely downloaded, just click on the exe file and JDK will be installed on your system. Then you can rerun your Eclipse installation and then it will run all smooth, right? So once you have the Eclipse installed, so when you install Eclipse for developers, so this is what I told you, that you will basically have a logo which looks something like this, as you can see on my taskbar, or looks something like this. It's actually the same. So click on that. That is basically Eclipse for developers, and that will install Eclipse for you and will have all the settings required for you to work with, right? Now, once you click on help, you go to install your software. You will be putting in the website that I told you. You would be able to install TestNG. And one small correction, guys, what I told you, Maven will actually be pre-installed when you install Eclipse for developers. Okay, so if you go to new file, new, and if you go to project, you will have to go to Maven and you'll have to click on Maven project, right? Just select that, click on next, and create a project. Just click on next again. No need to spend your time here, and then you'll have to specify artifact ID. Let's specify it as, let's say, Selenium -test. Okay, once you specify this, just click on finish, and then a project will actually be created for you. So as you can see, it's Selenium -test over here. Now once you click on that, you will find all these folders. You will find a pom.xml file, you will find source main Java, you'll find the package, and you'll find app.java over here, which will have code which looks something like this. Great. So this is your first file. Right now, with the help of help and install new software, you have TestNG installed in Eclipse now, right? So you don't have to worry about using the TestNG framework. And why is that used, I'll tell you in a little while. But TestNG has now been installed, Maven has now been set up, and now you have Selenium on you, right? Next thing that we want to do is we want to download all the dependencies which will actually help us to create a test case. So those would be basically the Selenium software, and obviously also include the TestNG annotations, which we'll actually not mention in the dependencies that is already downloaded, but we'll have to import the TestNG library by specifying code over here, which we will do. But first, let's go ahead and download the dependencies. Right now, the dependencies, guys, these are all the dependencies that I've actually gone on the Maven website and seen what I basically require for running the software. So the first dependency is the Selenium HQ.Selenium package. Then what you need is the Selenium API, right? So this also you have to download. Here you're downloading the Selenium Chrome driver, because we will be using Chrome for all our Selenium tests. Then you need the Selenium API. You would need the Selenium server. Then you would need the Selenium Java extension, and finally you will be needing JUnit. JUnit is actually not required, and it's actually a part of your dependencies, right? So let's just go into the pom.xml for our newly created project. As you can see that over here you already have the JUnit dependency included, right? So let's add the other dependencies that I just showed you. So I have so let's skip our JUnit dependency. Let's focus on the other dependencies, right? So we want the Selenium Java dependency. Let's copy this and let's paste it here. So Selenium Java dependency has now been included in a pom.xml file. Then we also need the Selenium server. Let's take in this dependency also, paste it here. Then we need the Selenium API dependency. Let's copy this and let's paste it also over here. Then we need the Selenium Chrome driver, which we are going to copy and then paste over here. All right. So once you have all the dependencies in the pom.xml file, what you'll have to do is to download all these dependencies, just save, do a Control S. And as you can see, all the dependencies will get downloaded over here. So as you can see, all the dependencies have gotten populated inside Maven dependencies. And now my environment is set up basically to create a Selenium test case, right? It's that simple. So if you were to basically revisit what we just did, we installed the JDK, that is the Java JDK. Then we installed Eclipse for developers. We created a Maven project and we acquired the Maven dependencies for Selenium, and we were done, right? Now let's go ahead and let's see how we can create automated tests. Now we have the environment ready. Now let's see how to create automated tests. So there are basically 3 actions or 3 steps to basically do any automated test on Selenium, right? The first thing that you have to do is you have to find the element on the browser on which you want to do any action. For example, let's say you want to put some text in a text box and you want to click on submit and see what is the output. So what are you doing over here? Your system will first find where is the text box. So once it has the text box and it has the button, it will perform the action. What is the action? Action over here is putting the text inside the text box and then clicking on the submit button. So that is the second step. Third step is testing and reporting, which basically will do will download all the tests. Will basically do the action and check whatever is the output. That is basically testing, and then it will also create a report in the term of an HTML, which you can view in your browser to see what all actions passed and what all actions failed. So these are the 3 steps or 3 basically stepping stones for creating an automated test. So let's go through these steps one by one. The first step is find element, right? So you can find an element in a particular web page with the following or by the following attributes. Okay, so let me give you a brief about what I basically mean. Let's say this is a website that you see, right? All the things that you see over here, for example, you see this community button, you see this documentation button, overview button, you see these buttons, you see this button, you see these 3 lines, which is also a particular element. These are all elements of these websites, right? And what you need to do is you need to find, or you need to tell your computer to find one particular element out of all these elements on which you want to do an action. For example, let's say I want to click on Java card, this particular link I want to click on. So how will I tell my computer as to you have to click over here, right? So this particular element can be identified using a lot of things, right? And basically obviously through code, but how do we know all the attributes which are related to this particular element, which is Java card, which I can actually tell my computer and tell, okay, so this is the attribute that you have to check for. Whichever element has this attribute with this particular value, please go through that element. So how do we check that? Just right click here and click on inspect. Okay. So what you have over here is the website on the left hand side, then you have the code in the middle, and then you have extension of what that code means over here, which is a segregated version of your code. So basically we do not need this as of now. This is the code of the website. So what you need to do is you can just click on this tiny button over here which says select an element in the page to inspect it. I clicked on it, and now you can just select any element that you want to look at. So let's say I want to look at Java card, right? This is what I'm interested in. So I click here, and as you can see, this is the code for that particular element. Now, what will we look out in this element? So do we have anything such as ID? So these are the attributes that you can actually look out for in the code, right? For example, you might have attributes say like ID. You might have an attribute such as name, class name, tag name, link text, partial link text, or the most important, which is the XPath. For example, over here, you can see this is a Gmail web page that you have, and we were basically inspecting the next button, which is listed over here. So we right clicked on the next button, we clicked on inspect, and then this code was open. All right. So in this code, we recognize that this particular button has a class which is of the type CWAK9, right? So what we wrote was web element is equal to driver.findElement by class, because this is the class that we basically want to search for. And the class basically should belong to this particular text, which is mentioned over here, right? Which is CWAK9. And this particular text will be unique to only this particular element. No other element will have this particular class ID or class name, right? So this is what class name is. So it could be that none of them are there. It could be there's no ID, no name, no class name, tag name, link text, or partial link text, which you can actually see is the case over here where you don't have any ID or something like that. So in those kind of cases, what you need to do is you need to go for the XPath. Now, how do you find the XPath? So there is an extension in Chrome, guys, which is basically called ChroPath, right? So it's called ChroPath. And once you type it in your browser, you can see ChroPath for Chrome. Just go over there and click on that extension, right? And then for me, it says remove from Chrome because I already have it. For you, it will say add to Chrome. So once you have added it, you're all set and you're good to go. Just restart your browser. And then once you come on this inspection screen, all you have to do is on the third page or on the third pane where you have all the code, just click on this arrow and you will see something called as ChroPath over here. Just click on that. Okay. So now if I click on the inspect element button and if I go to Java card, you will see that I have the XPath listed over here. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this XPath and I will mention it over here in this code, wherein I'll say driver.findElement by .xpath, and then I'll mention the text which I have copied from here in between these inverted commas, and then my Selenium browser should, or my Selenium code should be able to identify that particular element. All right. So this is how you find an element while you're coding. Okay. Next step is to perform an action, and you can actually do all these actions. So you can click on that particular element which you have found. You can send some text to that element. You can clear that element if it's a text box and there is some text written in it. You can clear that element, or you can also submit, whatever information is there. You can also submit it using that particular element, right? So in our case, let's say we basically found a button. So you can actually click on that button by specifying, by finding that element first and then appending the text, which is .click function, which is nothing but the click action. So once it finds that element, it will be able to click on it. So in our case, when we have this Java card, we can actually click on this Java card by typing in driver.findElement by .class, and then these open and close these brackets. In the text, you just copy the XPath and then type in .click, which will basically click on that element for you. right? And that's how it goes. So this was about actions. So you can do all these actions in Selenium. And then you have something called as testing and reporting. So testing, what do you want to test that you have done in your code is for that. And for testing and reporting, basically guys, we have our third important software component, which is TestNG, which we actually downloaded while we were creating our environment, right? So for finding the element and for performing any action, Selenium will help you out. But for testing and reporting, you need another tool or another framework, which is basically called TestNG, right? So TestNG will help you to test and report back whatever errors it found, right? But for finding any element on any website which you have mentioned in the code and performing any certain action on it is basically the role of Selenium. Testing it and reporting it is done by TestNG. Okay, and that is why TestNG is used. So what is TestNG exactly? TestNG is basically an automated testing framework where NG basically means next generation. So basically testing next generation, that is the keyword over here. It is a testing framework which has been basically been inspired from JUnit, which is basically yet another testing framework just like TestNG, but TestNG is more popular and that's why we're using it today, right? And it is a little more powerful than your JUnit testing framework. Okay, so what are the features of TestNG? TestNG basically makes use of some annotations. What are annotations? We'll get into it later, but TestNG makes use of annotations. It also helps you in creating reports. It also helps in parallel text execution if you have Selenium Grid installed. And there are a host other features as well, but these three are the most important features. That is, it supports parallel execution, it generates HTML reports for you, and it makes use of annotations, which I'll tell you how they are important as we move along. Okay, so setting up TestNG, it's pretty simple guys. Go to help, click on install new software, and then you would be all set. Now before we move along guys, let us create our first test case. So all we have to do is I'll go to Eclipse, right? And this is our code where we will be starting off. So first thing that you have to do is you have to import the libraries which you have downloaded in the Maven dependency. So how do you import that in your programming workspace? You will have to write some import commands, right? So what are those import commands? So first you will have to import Selenium library. In Selenium library there's a function called by, the function called WebDriver, and there is something called as Chrome driver. So all these you will have to import. So let's specify that, right? Let's paste it here, click on save, and then it gives you a warning, and this warning is basically because you're not using whatever you imported as of now, right? Which is actually okay, because now we're going to start off with our test, right? Now the next thing that you do is you're making use of Selenium WebDriver. So let's create an object of the WebDriver. So let's type in let me see if I can make the text a little bigger for you guys. Okay, so WebDriver, this is the library name, and then now let's create an object for it. So let's call the object as driver. Okay, so as you can see, once you have used the WebDriver library, now the warning button has gone, but now it says the object that you have created, driver, is not being used anywhere. All right, no issues. Next thing that we do is we basically go on and tell our code that we want to use Chrome. Now how do we do that? We basically write something such as system.setProperty, and then we specify the Chrome driver library that we have used, and that library we specify the executable for Chrome so that it can execute Chrome for all its tests, right? So let me just copy this and we'll talk more about this, right? So now I have the testing line over here, says system.setProperty. So webdriver.chrome.driver, right? This is something that we are using. And what are we using? We are basically using a Chrome driver. This is basically an executable which you'll have to download based on your Chrome version, right? For example, how do you find out your Chrome version? Just click on these three buttons, click on help, click on about Google Chrome, and then you would be able to see your Google Chrome version, which is 78 for me, right? Once you have this version, just go on a new tab, type in download Chrome driver. You will see the first link, just click on that, and then it'll ask you which version do you want to download. So you have the 79 version, the 78, the 77, and you can also, if you have an older Chrome version, you can also go ahead and download the older versions over here. So you have 76, you have 75, all of them are available over here. You can download it, right? So in our case, we need Chrome driver 78 because that is what my browser is. So I'll just click here. It'll take me to the screen, and then based on your operating system, you can choose which one do you want. So in our case, I'm basically working on Windows. So I'll just click on Win32 and I'd be able to download the Chrome driver for myself, right? So once I have that, I can just go here. So here it is, the Chrome driver has been downloaded. And what I've done is you can just double click here and you'll find the Chrome driver executable here. Just copy this, save it at a place, and mention that file path in your code, which is basically over here. So in my case, the Chrome driver basically which I downloaded exists in a folder which is Chrome 3 in downloads, and that's what I mentioned over here. All right. So once you have the executable in place, now your web driver has been set, so it now knows how to open Chrome. Your code knows how to open Chrome. The next step would be to define, to initialize your object as a Chrome driver, which is a driver, right? So let's do that. So the Chrome driver, which we basically now imported over here, we want to initialize that, and we're going to say that this particular driver object is of the type Chrome driver also. All right, all good. So now we have set the driver, and now the next step is to open a website. And to open a website, the code is this, which is driver.get. So I can specify which website to go on to by using the function which is get, right? So driver is the object in which I will write .get, and I will specify the website name, which is, let's say in my case, facebook.com, right? So let's try this first. Let's try to open this website. So let me just save this code, and now let me click on play. So what I want to run is, one second, I want to basically run this particular file, and for running this, I have to run it as a Java application. All right. So as you can see, the Chrome page opened, and now I'm on facebook.com. Great. So this is step one as to how you can open facebook.com, and you can actually mention anything over here. Let's say I mention Intellipaat.com over here. Let's see what happens then. So I mention Intellipaat.com, and I hit on the run button, and now it will open Intellipaat.com for me. So as you can see, my browser has now opened Intellipaat.com. Cool. So we are done with Selenium being able to interact with Chrome. We're good with that. Now let's go ahead and let's talk about how to find elements. Right. So as you can see, we have imported the by library, right? So the first thing that I want to do is driver dot find element dot by. Okay, I might not be getting the syntax right over here. So it's find element, driver dot find element, right? So this is the syntax for that, right? And then in the brackets you specify what you want. So I want it to be done or searched with a particular parameter that I want to specify, right? So let me just copy everything over here. right? And as you can see, now it will find the element by ID. I don't want to find by ID. What I basically want to do is I want to find it using XPath. Or let us actually, you know what, let's try to go on this website. So we'll go to this website which we were discussing, right? And what I want to do is I want to go to Java card link, and for that the XPath is that, right? So let's copy this XPath, and I'll say driver.findElement by.xpath, and I'll mention the XPath over here, which is this, and I'll put a semicolon, which will basically end the code, right? So now what I'm doing is, as you can see, the by warning has also gone because I've used by now. So it is finding an element which basically has Java card, that is this particular link, and what I want to do is I want to click on it. So I'll just add dot click, right? Let me remove the extra semicolon over here, and now my Selenium test will basically go on this website, it'll click on the Java card, and then it will end the test. So if I click on Java card, let's see how the website looks like. So the website basically looks like this. So this website should be opened by my Selenium by running this code. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's save the code. Let's click on run, and let's see our Selenium web case work. So it opened that website, and then now it should click on Java card. So it is loading the website, and now it clicked on the Java card automatically. As you can see, the website opened and you have the Java card downloads, and this is basically the window which is being controlled by the automated test software, right? So it automatically did that. Let's do something more interesting, right? Let's go to, let's say, let's go to google.com. So let's go to www.google.com, right? And let's go here on www.google.com, and let's search for Intellipaat, right? Let's search in this search bar for Intellipaat. So if it types Intellipaat over here, I wanted to just write Intellipaat over here, right? So let's see how we can do that. So first I'll have to inspect, and for inspecting this search bar, I'll have to click on this particular button, click on the search bar, and then I should get something like this. I go to crow paths, and this is the XPath for it. Let's copy it, come back in a code. I want to find this particular element, and then I want to type into it, which is basically send keys function, and what I want to type is Intellipaat inside it. Let's see how this goes, right? So now let's click on the run button. So this should now open a browser which will go to google.com. So let's give it some time. It's opening the browser. Okay, I think something went wrong. Just check. Okay, so here I'm getting an error. It says exception in thread, invalid argument, and I think the reason for that is I did not specify HTTPS. It should now work, right? Let's try this again. All right, let's hit on run. So Chrome opened, it went on Google, and as you can see, it typed in Intellipaat automatically, right? And this is what was intended. Now what I want to do is I want to do something, some test I want to do. Let's say I clicked here and then I get all these suggestions, right? So if I'm guessing these suggestions, I will check for all these suggestions, and if these suggestions are there, then the test will pass. But as you can see in Selenium, I do not have any option which basically allows me that. So I will have to use a software which can basically check if I'm able to see all these text or not. Right? So if I'm able to see all these text, then the test should pass. And for that exact same thing, we need something called as TestNG, right? So TestNG basically helps us to create tests, and in order to go ahead and do it, what I need to do is I need to first import the TestNG package. So let's do that. I will go to Selenium and I will go to my text editor, and this is the import which is required for annotations in TestNG. Let's copy this. Let's paste it here. So now my TestNG should be, so I have to add the TestNG library. Let's do that. So as you can see, TestNG library has now been added, and now this TestNG I can actually be able to use. So, but before we start to use TestNG, let's just go back to our slide. So we have set up TestNG in our environment. Next step is there is something called as annotations. So what are annotations, guys? Annotations basically decide the flow of the program. What do you mean by that? Let's say I want to test a particular thing in TestNG, or I want to, before I execute the test, I basically want some pre actions to be taken. For example, let's say I want to go to a particular website, or I want to import some libraries, or I want to set the environment. So if there is anything that you want to do before the test starts, you can actually specify that using annotations, or if there is anything that you want to do after the test, that also you can specify using annotations. So no matter where in the code you specify these annotations, they will work according to what they have been programmed to, as in they basically helps you in doing sequencing. For example, you have something called as @ before suit, you have something called as @ before test, @ before class, @ before method, and @test. So, right? So whatever test you write has to go inside @test. So that will be treated as a test in Selenium whenever you mention this particular annotation. Whatever annotation is there, such as @ before method, @ before class, @ before test, all of these will be executed before, as it is written, before your test executes, right? So let's see how we can do that. Let me go to my website, right, or my Eclipse. So now let's specify, let's say @ before test. This is the annotation, and obviously I'll have to import all the annotations in TestNG. So let's do that. So I specified @ before test, and what I want to do is, let me just paste it here, right? So @ before test, and now what I want to do is, let's say I type in system.out.println, and then I specify, let's say, before test text. Let's say I specify this. Okay, this @ before test will actually not need your main method. So let me do this, guys. I actually have a sample program in place. Let me open that so that I can demonstrate it to you, right? So over here, as you can see, there is no main function, right? So main function basically depicts the starting of your program. So if in my app.java, if I don't put the main function, my code will not know which function to run first, because there is no starting of the code, right? So let's say @ before test, and what I specify is, let's say public void test, right? This is the function, and I include my program in this function. All right. Okay, so if you see this code, as you can see over here, there is nothing which has been mentioned as main. There's no main function in this program, and that is similar to what I'm also doing in this particular program. I just need to mention @ before test before this particular function. Okay, so nowhere in my code I am basically calling my test function, but still this program will execute. Right now, how will it execute? So let's say this is before test text. This is what you have written over here, and then what I do is let me just remove everything from here, and let me just put @test annotation here, and let me define one more function. Let's say public void test2 function. Okay, and in this block of code I mentioned the rest of the code. So I have two functions now. I have the test function and I have the test2 function, and irrespective of what is happening over here, let me just comment all of this. I don't want to do anything, I just want to run my annotation, and what I do is I just mention, let's say I print system.out and .println. ln basically means a new line, and I say this is the main test. Okay, so now what will happen is, since I have no main function, my program should not know which function to run first. But still, if I click on the run app.java button, you would be able to see that I have the before, this is the main test, right? And then before that I had the before test text. Let me just comment these lines also so that a browser does not open. Right, so let me just save this program and run it again. So as you can see, now you have two things which are running. Let me just make this command prompt a little bigger. So it says before test text, and then it says this is the main test. So first this line is executing, and then this line is executing, right? Let me now change the annotations. Let me now say this is @before test, and let's say this is @test. Now what should happen? Let's see. Let's click on this button and let's see what is the output. So as you can see, it says this is the main test first, and then it says before test text. But although if you look at the code, this particular code comes first and then this particular code comes, right? But these annotations basically help you to decide which code should be executed in the first manner and then which code should be executed. Let me show you one more very interesting thing, right? So you have defined a function which is @before test. Let me write one more @test. Okay, and now let me just type in public void test2 and then type in system.out.println, and now let's type in the text. Let's say this is the second test. Let's give a semicolon, and let's say the function is test3. Okay, so this is my @test. This is also my @test, and this is @before test. Now what will happen? What do you think? So let me execute it first and then I'll tell you what basically happens. So I'll just click on the run button and let's look at the output. So it says this is the main test, then it says before test text, then it says this is the second text, right? So what is happening basically? So first it runs before test, and then here you have the text, this is the main test. Okay, this is what you see over here. Then it runs the test, which is you know, the first test that we wrote, which is before test text. It runs that, and then it again runs, this is the second text, right? And which is basically this. Okay, now let me write one more annotation over here, which is @ before method, right? And let's specify a function over here, which is, let's say, test4. And here I am just printing again, and what I'm printing is test method. Okay, now let's see what happens. I'll again click on the run button. Now just look at what just happened. It says this is the main test, or we can actually just rename everything once. So in my @test, this is the second test, this is the first test. Then you have @before method, this is before test method, and then I have before test, so this is my before test. Okay, let me hit on the run button now, and now let's analyze the result. It's very interesting, guys. So the first thing that you see, it says this is the before test, okay, which is basically my function, which is this particular function, which is @before test. This is the before test. You get this? Then you have something called as before test method. This is the before test method, which is basically the annotation @before method. Then you get, this is the first test, which is basically the @test annotation, where you have this particular print statement. Then you again get before test method, which is basically this particular function over here, right? And then only it basically executes the second test, which is this is the second test, right? So what does this tell us about annotations? So this tells us about annotations that @before test is executed only once, right, before your testing begins. Then no matter how many tests you have in that testing suite, before every test, this before method annotation function will run, right? As is evident over here, that before method test ran before the first test, and before test method also ran before the second test. Okay, so whatever functions you want to specify for whatever commands that you have to run before any test, all of that can be specified inside the before method annotation. And this is exactly what annotations are all about. You can control the flow of your program using annotations in TestNG. Okay, now let's talk about a very important part, which is basically the @test method, which basically has your main code. And for that, let me just copy everything which we wrote before, and let's complete the test that we were creating, right? So @test method, you have this, and then you have this code. All right, so let's just remove all the comments. Right, let's save the code, and now let's run this code. So it opens Google and it types in Intellipaat. Now let's create a test. So what I want to do is I want to go to Intellipaat website and I want to search for DevOps, and then I want to click on search. Then on the search page, I want to check for DevOps certification course, and if it exists, I want to click on that course. And on the course page, I want to verify whether I have the DevOps certification training text present or not. Okay, so this is the test that I'm going to create. So let's do that. So first, what I want to do is I want to go to www.intellipaat.com. Over there, I want to find an element that is a search bar element. So let's do that. Let me go to the browser and let me go to intellipaat.com. So this is the search bar that you'll just see over here. So let's inspect this search bar. This is the one. The XPath is this. Let's copy it and let's paste it over here. Right? So this is the XPath for it, and what I want to search for is DevOps. Right? Let's see if this is executing. If this is executing, we'll go ahead. Let's save that code and let's run the browser. Right? So it should open intellipaat.com. And it should now type in DevOps. Great. So this has been done by my code. The next thing that I want to do is I want to click on search. So in order to do that, I again would have to inspect the element, which is search. This is the XPath for that. Let's copy it. Let's paste the XPath and let's paste this line, which will basically check for this XPath. And what I want to do is I want to click on this button, and for doing that, what I have to do is, one second, I'll have to change the .send keys. I'll have to change it to click, and I'll have to remove everything from in between. Great. So now I should click on the search button once I click on DevOps. Great. Now let's click on the run button. This will open the Intellipaat.com website. It'll type in DevOps and then it'll click on search. Great. So now I am on the search page, and I want to click on this particular course or this particular course, right? So how do I do that? So again, I would go back to my website. I will search for DevOps, and on the page I will have to click on DevOps certification training, right? This is where I want to click on. So what I'll do is I'll just one second, guys. So now what I'll do is I'll inspect this and I'll copy the XPath for this. I'll again go back. I will paste the XPath here, right? I will specify that I want to find this element, and then I will specify that I want to click on it, right? So let's see if this works. So now it should open Intellipaat. It should search for DevOps. On the DevOps search page, I should click on DevOps certification training. And yes, so I'm here, I'm on the DevOps certification page. Great. The next step is to be on the course page. We have to verify if the page is having DevOps certification training as the header, which is basically I want to check whether this particular text is mentioned in my website or not once I have reached on this page. So if everything goes well, it should land up on this page, and for my Selenium code to verify it's on this page, I'll have to verify if it's able to find an element which is looks something like this. Okay, so let's do that. So I'll go again to my web page, and I want to see if I'm able to find this header. Great. Let's inspect this, and let's inspect this header. This is the XPath. Let's copy it. All right, so let's first paste the XPath. Let's find this element, and once we have found it, let me just type in get text. Right, and let's save this value inside a variable. Let's call this variable as string header, and then this is header, or let's call it as let's say test string. Okay, so test string now should have DevOps certification training. So let's check. Let's try to echo this system.out.println. Let's go ahead and try to print this variable, which is test string. Let's give the semicolon after that, save it, and now let's click on run. So now it should open the browser. It should go to intellipaat.com. It should write DevOps. It should click on search. It should then go on the course page, and then once the page is loaded, it should go ahead and print this particular header. Let's see if that is printed. Yes, so the test has been printed over here. The next thing that I have to do, guys, is I'll have to check for this test string, which is whether it is having this particular text or not, right? So how do we do that? One step is this, wherein you can actually check in the command line whether that is working or not, or you also happen to have a command in Selenium which can basically check if your text is equal to this particular string or not, right? So there's a command for that. I think I forgot that command. Let me just check it once. It should be there in some of my tests that I've created. Just give me 1 second, guys. It should be here somewhere. Yes, so here it is. So it says that this is the text, guys. Let's just copy this and let me just paste it over here. Right, so here what it basically happens is that you specify the second variable, or the second string is compared with the first string, and if that is done, then it says your test has passed, and otherwise it will say that your test has failed, which basically means that let's first try to go onto our page and let's try to remove this, right? and now you can actually see the definition. So assert and then dot assert equals, so it says boolean actual and boolean what is expected. So boolean actual is what we have got from the website, and boolean expected is what is there in my what is there that I expect in the variable, right? So this boolean expected is something that I'll have to specify, and then boolean actual is something that I'll have to fetch from the text. So what we need is not boolean, we basically need string. So string actual and string expected, right? So because our what we're trying to get is string. So let's just click on this, and now actual what is expected. So actual is this particular string, so let's just name it as actual, right? And what is expected, so let's specify expected as well, string expected, and let's specify the text. So we basically want our Intellipaat website, this particular text is expected. Right, so let's just paste it over here and give a semicolon. So then it will check whether my actual string that I got from my website, whether it is equal to expected or not. Let's save this, and now let's click on run, and let's see how it goes. All right, so now it will go to intellipaat.com, search for DevOps, click on search, then it will reach the search page, it will again click on the course page, and if the test goes well, you should see something like it says passed, right? Which means that your test has been completed successfully. Let's say we change the expected value. Let's say I remove the online word from here. Let's see what happens then. So I'll just save this, I'll run the code. Let me just close the other window. Yeah, so now it'll again go to Intellipaat. It'll search for DevOps, click on search, click on DevOps course, and now it will do the test. And let's see if the test, so it says failures 1, as you can see, and you've got a log over here, and it says expected DevOps certification training course, but find DevOps certification course online, right? And this is what we were expected to do, right? So guys, this was all about the test. I thank you all for attending today. Now guys, if you're interested, we also happen to teach you guys on Selenium, right? And there's actually a pretty good offer going on our website. So all you have to do is just go to intellipaat.com. You have to go to your search bar, search for Selenium, right? And this is a Selenium course, just click on that. And this training is basically delivered by us, and we have top-notch instructors who are from around the industry. We do live instructor-led trainings where we also happen to offer you lifetime support, and we give you training worth of 45 hours. We also have project work which is related to 72 hours, and after completing this training you would be eligible to become a 6 months experience Selenium tester, right? So all you have to do is just register on your website, and you can go ahead with this training if you are interested. Also, for the people who are attending this live, you can actually type in the code YouTube30, and you would be given a flat 30% off on whatever the price is mentioned on the website. All right, so if you're interested, please go ahead, go to our website. You can also call on the numbers which are mentioned on the screen, which are these. right? So if you're in India, you can call on these numbers. If you're in US, you can call on these numbers. You can also drop us a mail at sales@intellipaat.com, and we'd be happy to answer all your queries. All right. So with that, guys, I would like to take a leave from all of you. I thank you all for attending to this session. I hope this session was useful to you. If in case you have any problems, please comment it down in the comment section, and we'll be happy to answer all your queries. All right. So thank you, guys. I'll see you in some other session. Have a great day ahead, and goodbye.